Hello! I finally got a tripod, so I don't have to put this at like any weird angles anymore. I don't have to put you back on the microwave. I can actually film properly now. Today I'm going to be making 2 supply pouches out of this makeup bag pattern. I need one for my illustration class and one for my sewing class because I had like these little clear plastic bins that held everything, but they broke. The pattern I found is completely free. There were a couple more like complicated, I guess, ones out there, but this one is literally like 4 rectangles. It was like the easiest one to modify and it's completely free. I am gonna have a link to it down below, but you can also just follow along with what I do. This pattern is literally 4 rectangles. It was like the easiest one to modify. The pattern calls for like each rectangle to be 9.5 inches by 5.5 inches. But I'm gonna make mine like exactly 1 inch bigger, so it's like 10.5 by 5.5. Yeah, I need the extra room for like scissors, watercolors. The first step was to actually get the fabric, so I headed over to Joann's and I started looking first in like the holiday themed section because I was trying to find something with little red hearts on it. Someone got to it before I did though, so I went with red polka dots and a solid pink fabric, and I got 1 yard of each thing. Okay, so this is the pattern layout. It's exactly the 6.5 by the 10.5. I'm using 4 pieces of each fabric here because it calls for an outer and an inner lining for each half of the rectangle. Because this fabric is slightly transparent, I'm using the outer lining and inner lining out of the same fabric. This is the fabric for the other one. I'm gonna do the same thing. Inner and outer lining are gonna be the same fabric. Also gonna note here that on the solid pink one, I'm gonna make a little heart applique out of a camo fabric that is left over from a skirt that I'm making for my class. I didn't get it at the same time that I got these fabrics, so I didn't show it yet, but I'll show you the process. I'm probably gonna end up hand stitching it on before I go and sew everything together. While you're cutting the fabric, try to keep the actual fabric as flat and even as possible without picking it up too much. Picking it up and cutting it at an angle could get the fabric to distort a little bit and make the edges of the pieces come unaligned. And also with the pins in the corners are generally a good spot to pin, but just make sure that it doesn't run off the edge because you could clip your scissors and damage them. For the heart applique, I'm measuring about 2 inches in height, and then I'm just going to really cut along the red line. You only want to mark it on the inside and make sure that you're doing this on a fold to get it perfectly symmetrical. I've actually figured that I'm probably gonna put this on later because the shape of these is gonna like kind of change a lot. Like this is gonna be like the top where the zipper is. This is gonna be the bottom seam over here. So I know it's gonna be somewhere kind of in the middle, but I think I want to wait before, just because I don't want to mess it up at all. So I'm gonna kind of try to hand sew it in too so that I don't lose too much. Once you have the fabric cut out, you're going to lay it out like this with one piece with the pattern face up, zipper facing down, and the other fabric pattern facing down. And then pin it up so that all 3 edges are perfectly straight. And then you're just gonna sew them in a line down like that. This is gonna be sewn at a 1/8 inch seam allowance, so it's going to look aligned with that little foot there, and you're doing this with the regular presser foot is what this particular pattern calls for. You're going to start at the edge of the fabric, go forward just a couple of stitches, and then back stitch, and then you can go down the rest of the fabric. When you're almost at the end, right about here, you're gonna dive the needle into the fabric using the little hand wheel on the side, lift up the presser foot, and then unzip the zipper so that it's further behind the needle than where you're sewing, preferably about 2 to 3 inches. This is to get the bulky part of the zipper out of the way so that you don't end up with like a weird dive off to the side in your sewing. You don't have to do this super early on. As you can see here, I really only left like 2 to 3 inches for this step.
that you're done, you've got the exact same setup and the exact same steps on the other half of the zipper. More or less, it should end up looking like this. If you don't want to press it, you don't have to, and I didn't end up pressing it myself. Now for the bottom seam, you want to pin the opposite edges of the fabric together with the lining on the outside, and you're going to end up sewing it at a 1/4 inch seam allowance and back stitching it at both ends. When you're done that, it should end up looking almost like a little bit of a tube. And then to sew the ends, you're going to lay it flat with the center of the zipper directly over the bottom seam. And you're going to unzip it about halfway to make sure that, again, the zipper bulk isn't there. When you're sewing across the open end, just try to take it slow, keep calm, but make sure that they're pinned up perfectly evenly, or else there will be a pretty big gap where you're trying to zip it. For the basic pouch, that's pretty much it. You can turn it inside out right now if you want to be done, but it does have an extra step to give it a little more shape, which I'm going to do. You flatten it like this, again keeping the zipper and the back seam aligned, and then marking out one of the corners, roughly about 1 inch or a half of an inch with a pencil, and then sewing straight over it. This is going to give it a little bit more of that boxy shape, but remember, the larger that you make it, the skinnier and boxier it's going to be. So if you're uncertain, just pin it and flip it inside out to check. Alright, and when you're all done with that, you really just flip it inside out. Make sure that you get all the corners nice and pushed out, and that is pretty much it.
Alright, so that is actually everything for today. I unfortunately ran out of time to make the pouch during that filming day, but I have it right here. I just had to wait for like the next day and I couldn't get it all done on like filming time, but the pattern's gone. I can't find it anywhere. It's not in my history. It's not in my saved on Pinterest. It's not in my bookmarks. I don't know where it went. So I have two similar ones. I have a couple similar ones in the description instead of that pattern. Thank you for joining me on this and have a good day.